Because of the overlapping scenes and being aired as a double episode one and making one episode talk out of 2 episodes again. By the way, the season finale was aired on Emily's Van Camp's birthday. But I guess besides the cake this was not such a nice present. Some scenes of it will still be my favorites from this season, but the whole structure and premise of these 2 episodes I did not at all enjoy. So here we go. First of all, I like the simple title Truth, which hints at the importance of Emily's reveal before Jack as the most important cliffhanger on the show so far. And of course Charlotte's truth about being pregnant, which will be a huge game changer for her, Declan and her parents. Spoiler alert, only to be crackhead quite literally in the aftermath of season 2. Again, I did not really like Emily's monologue in this. The topic darkness was too obvious, and I think they would have better played with the darkness in people, so they could have addressed Conrad's ascension to power, Victoria's murder of Helen Crowley and the murder of Fomander in the previous episodes. They maybe even could have addressed Emily's and Aiden's darkness, since they have become even more implicated by what they were doing during their mission. Especially with Aiden killing Takeda in the last episode. And that again, instead of showing us a montage of frightening people or just people who are affected by this blackout, they tell us through Nolan what is happening. Though I like his quote about calling Emily was the only thing he could think about during Apocalypse, but they ruined it with this very silly idea of Nolan having his own satellite. Through again, life overtakes TV in this case. Now that people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk have such playthings, it does not seem that ridiculous anymore. About Declan, Regina and Charlotte, I like how she jumps right in on the opportunity of driving a wedge between Charlotte and Declan with this lie he stole her money. Though I was surprised that Charlotte believed her, since this was not typical for Declan. Yeah, he broke into a house at the beginning of the season and he stole lobsters in season 1 to make quick money. But he always seemed to be a decent young boy to me who tried to make it right. He never asked Charlotte for money, though he knows how wealthy she and her family is. Not to overdo comparisons with Titanic again, but this whole sequence really reminds of the scene in which they find the diamond necklace in Jack's pockets. And Rose does not oblige when Cal, her fiancé, mocks Jack and calls him a honest thief. But back to Declan. He never stole from her and he did not want to keep the money Charlotte bribed out of Victoria in season 1. So stealing was not at all a behavior pattern for him. And Charlotte knows Regina only what it seems a short period of time. She is no reliable source. Even more as she is constantly fighting with Declan over Charlotte and had spread lies about Fomander, too. I think they tried to redo the charms of those lesbian tendencies between Fomander and Emily in season 1. And of course she should spice and shake things up with Declan and Charlotte. A last desperate attempt to make Charlotte less annoying and more intriguing in this season. But again, since Regina did not last that long, it was too little too late. The one thing I hated about this blackout situation is the outcome. They could have done something really big, but instead they just planted a bomb on the Grayson Global building. So what was the blackout for? A cover-up? To make profits out of insurance sales? This was the most disappointing of the finale. Because it did not really felt like a finale for me in some way. And yelling at Aiden that Emily does not want him to be their next David Clarke did not raise the stakes for me. She knew he would be in danger if he helps her with her revenge agenda, so why be this cautious right now? About Jack and Victoria. Another thing I do not understand is why Victoria goes to Grayson Manor with Jack. What was her motive here? And why is she giving him this file about Amanda? Does she want to trigger Jack and make him shoot Conrad, since she seems to want to get rid of him? Or did the writers just find a way to bring Jack finally in a place where he questions everything and does not know what to believe anymore? I think instead of roll out the plot in 2 episodes, they could have shortened shortened it into one and cut all those redundant scenes and plots that did go nowhere out, and telling us multiple times that it is dangerous outside does not help if we do not actually see it. Maybe I am a little delicate with this since we in Germany had no big blackout yet, but I wished we had at least seen one scene in which someone of the cast got attacked or witnessed something bad happening. This whole situation feels so not at all dangerous or frightening. And that the blackout did not last that long was no help either. They certainly did not do a great job by filling in all those plot holes. Victoria working as some kind of a double agent for Conrad is as much believable as her working together with Jack on Conrad's demise. About Nolan and Emily finding Takeda's body. This was again a scene I like for itself and for the last flashback with Takeda. I think we only got 3 of them. The first in season 1 when Emily started her revenge and got Takeda's student in the first place, then the one with Aiden and her training with Takeda at the beginning of this season. And now this one with angry teenage Amanda realizing that Takeda is gonna help her take revenge and punish the Graysons. Seeing this flashback again, I wonder what Takeda had to say if he had outlived the end of the show. Would he believe she succeeded or would he seen her as a failure? She reached her goals no doubt, but she also failed to take the Graysons out once and for all, as she would say. So Victoria was still there in the last season to haunt her and hurt the ones she loved. Anyway, I use this scene a lot because besides the emotional scenes in season 4, this and the death of Fomanda are the only scenes in which Emily truly cries her heart out. I love how fragile she appears in this, and the shot from frog perspective with her and Nolan and the dead Boyd is one of my favorites from this season. Again, Nolan is there to comfort her as always. The cut was nice since she is slowly regaining her composure. The blabla about the fair fight is obviously to make it seem less offensive and a smaller betrayal of Aiden to kill their mentor. The writers seem to be afraid about the implication this has for their relationship. I still cannot see why they needed this break other than for theatrics, since they part later on a forgiving note and Aiden comes back in the next season. Spoiler alert. Maybe they wanted to make it more believable that he joins Victoria with this breakup. But for me this was always something that never stuck with me. They broke up so many times in season 3 for the nitpickingly reasons. Reminds me of the Vampire Diaries in the later seasons. They always found ways to separate the main pairing Damon and Elena. They even put her in some kind of a coma and gave her amnesia so she did not remember ever have loved him. Revenge is far from being that strange, but either Emily or Aiden find little reasons to break it off. Spoiler alert. First, him not telling her the truth about Takeda, which is for her far worse than killing that man. What? Then in season 3 her not being able to give him a family. Ever heard about adoption? Emily would have been a terrific foster mom since she knows firsthand what foster care can make out of children. And Aiden said it himself, a child of its own never mattered that much to him. If you think about it, is really a bad reason and some kind of excuse, cause if having children together is the bar that she has to face the rest of her life alone. But back to the last episode of season 2, finally. Takeda's backstory. First of all, this is so unbelievable that he hides such important information in an open object where everyone can find it. Second, why would he keep such a secret from his favorite student? Would this sad story not have been an even better way to gain the trust of an angry teen who wants to fight for the right thing? And again, why the hell do they just tell us all those things without any emotional flashback or at least some kind of scenes with his fiancée? About Victoria finding Charlotte's pregnancy test. This was funny and I would certainly not resist to bring up that misunderstanding. It was just hilarious seeing her react and fear a pregnancy of Emily. Even if Emily had borne Daniel a son, I believe Victoria would not have been contempt. By the way, I love Victoria blue top with the black pattern. Again refers to her role as loyal wife of Conrad, but the black gives it an evil look. About Conrad, Ashley, Jack and Victoria. I must admit I totally forgot how Victoria was helping Conrad in this. I thought he found out himself. But if she had not told him and helped him with the governor's wife, Conrad would neither be governor nor stayed ahead of Ashley and Jack. The more Victoria must have felt betrayed by him at the very end of this season. Really annoying for me was that Jack finds out more about Amanda, but we never see him confront Emily about all this. They just skipped that scene in season 3. Though it would have been the most interesting scene between the two. Emily finally coming clean about everything. We will definitely talk about this in the first episode talk of season 3. Since that was the most disappointing thing for me in that episode. But back to Aiden and Emily. Again a scene I like and dislike for multiple reasons. I like that Emily seeks comfort in Aiden's arms and that he is so in love with her that he lays everything on one card and wants her to run away with him. It was a nice sentiment, and if the show had ended with this season, maybe would have been a nice end for her journey. An intriguing idea, cause Emily would have not to face any more loss and she would not inflicted any more pain and harm on those she loves the most. After everything that happened, it would have been a less or more reasonable decision since she failed at almost everything in this season. Besides getting Daniel back and having two of the most important people in her life killed, she would have secured Jack, who was more than estranged of her. And her sister Charlotte would have been not such a big loss right now. Still, she could have revealed herself to Charlotte after the dust settled. What I hate is the fact that Aiden is too afraid to tell her he was the killer. Even more Emily's reaction. First, it was understandable that she goes after Aiden, and I almost thought she would batter him for what he did. But then he defends himself with this story about Takeda, what feels totally made up, and she seems to be more angry about him lying to her than the fact that he actually killed one of, or even the most important mentor in her life. And why does she answer the phone in this heightened situation? Just because the episode title, they did not have to make this fight about telling the truth. It is not funny that she who tells no one the truth and hides her true identity holds lying against Aiden. After all, she is the one who is constantly lying to everybody, Aiden included. About Emily and Daniel. I like the differences between those two embracing scenes. With Aiden, Emily really gives in and lets him secure her. Here she is not that much engaged and even rolls her eyes. Though I did not like the plot of the initiative and any last bit of it, I must give them credit for their sentiment here. Aiden, the son of the man who put the bomb on Flight 197, should be responsible for putting a bomb at the Grayson Global building. Perfect revenge story, since his motives are clear as ice. About Aiden and Nolan. I really like this departure scene. Very British and kind. About Conrad's trap for Jack. That was something that made the bombing even worth it. How everything turned out wrong for Conrad. Daniel and Emily were almost there, and he would have lost his son if he did not made him leave at the right time. And actually killing the wrong Porter brother and father of Charlotte's baby, in order to lose his daughter in the aftermath in the next season. And even his political victory was a Pyrrhic victory in the end. Anyway, Conrad was in best form with using the bombing and the blackout before to win the election and as a bonus get rid of Jack. I just love it when he and Victoria are the big bad. What I also enjoyed cinematically was the cut between Emily and Nolan running to save Jack, him seemingly walking into a trap and the building going down. With this major cliffhanger, they had to make a double episode, cause I do not think that we could have wait that long for its resolution. And again, showing Conrad as the big mastermind by intercutting his speech is some of the best montage on this show. Like the ones they did with Formunder's death and Conrad announcing to participate the race for governor of New York. I love the duplicity in his speech now and later after his victory. It is really despicable and so true how he uses everything that happened for his advantage. The most pretty thing in this episode was the hashtag Long Live David Clarke. I must admit that was a genius idea, pointing everything to Aiden and Nolan so that they would be the ones to blame since they want to revenge David. If they had not used this as a trick and volte-face for a surprising spin at the end, this story arc would have been far more plausible and entertaining. I think the finale was like the whole season cramped with too much plots that needed a resolution. And they only gave us unfulfilling ones with no real conclusion, only to make the surprise and the big theatrics even bigger. Something that disappointed me the most. At least the writing for his speech was on top, and of course Henry Czerny's acting. I love how he looks at his watch and when the messages come just looks slightly too early away from Victoria to see Grayson Global crumbling. And what they really captured is the horror of this explosion. I believe they cut those scenes so much because they did not want to re-traumatize people. Since 9/11 had its 10th anniversary 1 year before, and they had those attempt at the Boston Marathon, which only made this a double episode because they had to reschedule airing for the disturbing scenes were too near that incident. So I guess partly it was not planned that way, and therefore the episode appears so tame, though they have some heavy issues they are targeting here. And they even get Emily in danger cause one of those big stones is right beside here fallen into that taxi. In retrospect, I really love those scenes where they are showing the aftermath of the explosion cause it slightly reminds me of 9/11. Maybe it was best after all to cut those scenes cause some of the audience, especially since the plot is set in New York, have a hard time watching it. I guess because I am immune to Holocaust movies who often use real footage, this is the reason why I am not that much shocked by these scenes. I love those scenes with Conrad in the finale cause I love to hate him. He is really in his best shape at the end of Season 2 and the beginning of Season 3. In Season 1 and for the most part of Season 3 he stands in Victoria's shadow, but here he is enemy number 1. I like how Emily is rescued. For the first time she is not in control of the situation. And her excuse when Daniel finds her that she was looking for him is just hilarious. She lies to him with no hesitation and it is even believable. About Emily helping Jack. They really exhausted this till the every end. I thought every minute she was gonna tell him the truth since their conversations always had this double meaning. And I am still surprised how much Emily can tell him without arousing any suspicious questions from Jack. But I guess his brother being seriously injured and being targeted by the Graysons had him occupied. About Emily saying goodbye to Aiden. I love this one even though it is filled with clichés. But the key to an Italian villa was a nice idea. I can imagine Emily and Aiden more in an Italian village than in Paris. Though a cottage at the English coast would have been more fitting regarding all those hints at James Bond. I like that he is not giving up on her and still wants her to come with him. And it is a nice pattern that he cannot leave without knowing Emily is at least some kind of okay. And again here comes one of my favorite quotes from Aiden. It really sums up all his feelings and admiration for Emily.
I hope you get what you're looking for, Amanda. No one has ever deserved it more than you.
About Charlotte's and Declan's last scene. Too bad he did not come back in Season 3. Though I was really annoyed by their so-called love story, this was going into a whole other direction. Would have been fun seeing Jack handling two babies, his own and his nephew, or nice, and trying to reconcile with the Graysons for the sake of the baby. I think the writers only pulled this off cause they knew it would not last, but it was an intriguing idea and a far better plot than this halfway Romeo and Juliet storyline. About Conrad blackmailing Daniel. It is interesting how Conrad spins his stories. He tells everyone in his family a different story. Maybe he even is not fully true to Victoria. I really loved how Daniel finally stands up to his father and yet cannot stand the fight. With his boasting ego and at the brink of success, Conrad seems invincible. The more I enjoyed how Emily is toying with him in season 3. About Declan's death. This were maybe the best scenes of Connor Paolo in Revenge. I love that he shows how brave this young man is. He tries to make saying goodbye to him for everyone easy, including his brother. Him confiding into Nolan, who was like a father to him in some kind, really made their relationship full circle. In season 1, Nolan was some kind of a mentor and a guardian cause. He paid Declan's school debt and helped him get around Charlotte's boyfriend. About Emily and Victoria. One of my favorite scenes between the two and definitely my top 5 of season 2. How they talk finally very much in the open about Victoria's mistrust and Emily's attempts to destroy the Grayson family. I like the color choice, as green is the color of envy and invokes memories of the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz. I think that was the biggest insult. Victoria told Emily that she is like her. But everything she says in this great quote is true. Emily is as much determined and ruthless as Victoria, with one exception: she does not kill people. I still love her threat that she will show no mercy. That is really a promise from her cause that summons up what she does to Emily in season 3. It is also a promise from the writers to the audience that we will get a much more violent and aggressive fight between the Graysons and Emily in the next season. So I was thrilled when I heard her say this for the first time. Their vicious hate circle comes to full sight with Emily's reply that Victoria has nothing left besides her son Patrick, cause Daniel and Charlotte want nothing to do with her. And I love to see Victoria's reaction on Emily watching Aiden getting arrested. Too bad they zoomed in on Emily, cause I am sure Victoria is smiling. Maybe her suspicion about Emily and Aiden came from this scene. About Conrad's confession. I begin to enjoy those scenes. I did not recall that Conrad had a confession scene in every seasons. In season 1, when he confessed everything about the David Clarke conspiracy.
Spoiler alert.
In season 3, when he confessed all of his crimes, and in season 4 he could not, for he was dead. I was hooked and thrilled when he told his wife that there was no initiative. I love this conspiracy theory cause I have read about this after they had those insurance companies profiting out of natural disasters, and him talking so nonchalant about it and even pouring Victoria a drink while her glance was full of hatred and despise was just so funny. Though I am not supporting victim shaming and slandering women, I like how he speaks with Victoria and calls her out. Conrad really shows his worst side in this conversation. A greedy egomaniac with no remorse or empathy and a strong misogynistic streak. I like her reaction nonetheless, again something that reminds me of Titanic. A classic scene in which Rose spits at her former fiancé, who also called her a slut cause she was going to be with a penniless artist, namely Jack. About Jack going after Conrad. Obviously the death of his brother was the last drop to make Jack lose his temper and his mind. I did not like him going rough. He did that already when he threatened Ashley. But I must admit that is something he, Aiden and Emily have in common. When someone they love gets hurt or worse by the Graysons, they give into their rage, and Nolan has a hard time stopping them. About Jack threatening to shoot Victoria. This scene was interesting. First, how easy it has become to enter Grayson Manor. Kara Clarke had to disable the security system. and Emily always had a good excuse to be there. But Jack just walks right in and gets a hold of the gun. Second, Victoria's reaction. She really says he should shoot her. Maybe out of guilt, because she shares the guilt of murdering Jack's wife and the daughter of her great love David Clarke. I wonder if she had been that suicidal all along, or just in this desperate moment cause her beloved son Daniel told her she was all alone now. Spoiler alert. In season 4, when Emily threatens to shoot her, she does the same thing, just gives in. Maybe this was a trick, too, like she did with Emily. Not only for continuity reasons, it was good that Jack thought about it twice. He is right, it is a far better punishment for Victoria to live with the repercussions of telling Charlotte why she has to raise her baby alone and who killed her sister. About Nolan getting arrested and Padma's video. That revelation was something I enjoyed because it came out of nowhere, but everything made sense in the end. If they made something right in this season, then it was the plan to frame Nolan for everything and giving us a new and better big bad, Conrad Grayson. He fits the role best, and I really enjoyed his performance in season 3. About Aiden and Daniel fight. This was something I had long anticipated, and to put it in the finale was maybe not the best idea. Anyway, I enjoy how they both fight about who knows Emily best, cause Daniel can only lose in this. I like the opposite intentions of both men here. Daniel really thinks Aiden had something to do with the bombing, or is at least more dangerous than he seems to be on outward appearances. Which is not that much wrong. Aiden, on the other hand, wants to protect Emily cause he assumes Daniel will do her harm if he has to choose between her and his family. He wants to save her before she gets too much entangled with the Graysons. To spare her further harm and pain, like the death of Amanda and Declan. It is interesting that Aiden spares Daniel's life through he could have easily killed him without a gun. I wish they had not used this scene in the finale. Cause we had to wait so long for an explanation what happened after Daniel found Emily's gun again. Would have been far better if we had a cliffhanger from the end of an episode, like with Aiden shooting Gordon Murphy. And then in the next episode we would have seen Daniel either over Aiden's dead body or Emily finding a wounded Aiden in the beach house. Possibility 2 would have been that Daniel had been injured or killed by Aiden. Would have been interesting, too, cause Emily had to protect either Daniel or Aiden to cover up his traces. Stunning again was Gabriel Mann's performance, since he only had to react to a video in best and to a blue screen in worst case. One thing on Ashley. I like what colors she is wearing in these 2 episodes. First, there is this white dress with the black jacket hinting at her fluent status between good and bad. Trying to find the right direction. Then here, when she is sending Conrad out to be shot by Jack, she is wearing a black outfit like a Black Widow. About editing again. They really made this whole sequence more thrilling and added speed. Since Emily could not be running around for 10 minutes and Daniel had no time to lose either. Out Daniel's bloodstain. At first I did not get it cause I thought Daniel had been shot. But as I said before, it was cheap trick giving us 2 cliffhangers that were not worth any good explanation or salvation in the next episode. First, Aiden seemingly shot by Daniel but just wounded. No word about that till he was coming back at the end of the first episode. And then the huge cliffhanger which is coming up right now. With that it was even worse, since we even get no proper conversation between Jack and Emily afterwards. Do not get me started with the third one about Charlotte's baby and getting to know Declan is dead. They just skipped it and moved on to a renewed Charlotte. I must admit the cutting really gave the scene its suspense, and for a while I thought Jack would actually get his revenge and shoot Conrad, or at least tried. Would have been interesting if he accidentally shot Daniel. But as Emily found him, I knew she would do anything from preventing him doing such a stupid thing cause he would be going to jail for the rest of his life. And Emily could not possibly help him in this situation. I like the effect that we see Conrad behind himself on that big screen. Gives his ego a big boost and shows us how confident and invincible he must feel right now. Putting Victoria in the mix with seeing her son Patrick again was interesting. They just throwed all in so to have multiple new storylines. I wish they had at least saved one or two for the first episode of season 3. Cos spilling that glass and a surprising guest at the door felt a lot like The Bold and the Beautiful, if you know that show anymore. About Emily finally telling Jack the truth. This was obvious the reason for the title, and the conversation is really nice but was long overdue. So it is a shame that we only get this minute with a collage of flashbacks and no real talk after in the pilot episode of season 3. I wish they had jumped right after this scene and made no time jump here. I guess the writers did not really know what to write for their conversation, so they made them go separate ways after this. Which is not that much realistic since Jack must have a ton of unanswered questions. But you must admit the acting on both sides was superb. I must confess that this cliffhanger was bigger and more hurting for me than the one in season 3 with David Clarke. Season 1 with Victoria's fake death was easy to guess, I think. Major spoiler alert. And in season 3 we could at least looking forward to some interesting scenes with Emily and David. But here they had us anticipate how Jack would finally react only to leave us hanging. Cause his reaction was as disappointing to Emily as it was to us the audience. Let us look on the bright side, this season is finally over as the plot with the initiative. And I am really looking forward to season 3 cause this was my favorite season besides season 1 of course. Who will always have a special place in my heart since it was the beginning and we had all those first moments in it.